Chapter 2. Preparations took half a day. I don't like to refer to our group as bandits, but that's what we are. Living like we do, we always have to be ready to uproot at a single moment. Nowhere can be called home because we belong nowhere. The only permanent items we own are our own names and the name of the banner we ride under, Wanderlax. The most difficult portion of moving is the prisoners. We're only a band of 25 strong, with 60 women in our possession. A near 1-to-2 ratio isn't bad, but it's not great. If any of them decided to run, it would cost time, and we had precious little of that as it was. The first few times we transported prisoners, arguments had flown back and forth for hours. Solutions avoided us like children avoid soap and good sense. A newcomer, Hops, was the one to finally devise something, and it was to chain all the women together at the ankles. We'd proposed something similar before his arrival, but to no avail. We had the metal to make the chain, but not the skill. That Hops provided. He'd been a blacksmith prior to joining us 6 months ago. He'd been promised to the executioner's axe for killing the man who'd slept with his wife. Normally, a crime like that wouldn't land you a death sentence, but the method Hops used had been deemed from the god of evil himself. We got a good laugh when he told us. The first day of the trek went smoothly. Lookout, Ears, and Benny served as our scouts. Lookout and Ears were elementalists, and Benny was a spacer. Together, the three could triangulate a large area. Some would have said we were being too cautious. After all, we were in the Casparian Undulates. The Duke's Knights never patrolled these areas. Chief thought differently. Our wariness was the sole reason we'd been in business beyond a decade. Other groups had come and gone, but we, the Wanderlax, remained. The Duke's attempts to rid the land of us were thwarted by Chief's foresight. We never stayed in one place too long, and we never went back to a hiding hole we'd used to store prisoners. They tended to talk when sold. A whole week went by without incident. 2 weeks in, one of the women tried to run. She'd kept a nail hidden in her dress and used it to pick the lock on her chains. Shinsplint broke her legs, and Arc Mace healed her just enough to stand on her own 2 feet. It slowed our pace, and the woman whimpered the rest of the way, but the other prisoners received the message. There wasn't a sniff of trouble after that. We were all grimy when Time Winders finally came into view, but you'd have sworn you'd never seen a better behaved band of vagabonds. The city prided itself as jewel of the northern south. It sat on a hill with a loose approximation of a wall around its perimeter. It held around 200 buildings within, and was home to a population around 3,000. A manor sat on the easternmost edge that served as castle, but it was sorely dilapidated, as were most of the buildings within its boundaries. Despite this, it was yet better kept than most of the countryside.
"Sitter, you're coming in with me,"
Chief said. We'd set up camp at the edge of the undulates, beyond the sight of any scouts or patrols. No tents or fires were allowed. The smoke would attract attention, and tents would prevent a hasty escape. I groaned. Arc Mace protested. It had been too long since he'd seen Ophelia. Chief stood firm.
"Quit acting like you're a yippy dog. She'd kick you as soon as sleep with you."
"Why not both?" Brimshaw snickered to Rickabin. "He'd like that," Rickabin chuckled. Arc Mace wasn't bothered. "Please, I can get you a better deal if I'm there."
"I need Sitter. He has the figures from last time. We can't afford to screw it up. Supplies are low."
"I'll just sit in with you."
"No more than 2. You know the rules."
I offered a suggestion. Chief muttered under his breath. He blustered and threatened as I argued, but I won out. Arc Mace and I left to enter the city. Chief liked to sit in on the deals, but he wasn't really needed if I was around. Arc Mace could score us a higher yield with Ophelia, and I had the authority to act in Chief's place. It would have been foolish to debate otherwise. Chief should have been grateful. He hated Ophelia as much as I did, and I'd just saved him a meeting. I wore a fine cloak. Mace kept his regular dingy clothes on. It allowed us to pretend at being a lord and his bodyguard as we passed by the sentinels at the gate unnoticed. Once inside the city, we made for the Web. Of all the buildings in the city, it was the finest. Ophelia owned it, and she had an appetite for the finer things in life. She waited on the upper floor. Guards patted us down before we went up. Ophelia was just as paranoid as Chief was. It seemed everyone was these days.
You're lucky. I was going to leave a week early, but my forecaster said the weather would take a bad turn.
She drained the last of her drink and handed the empty mug to one of her servants. Mace and I sat opposite her at the table. She turned her large, bulbous red eyes toward me. 4 in total. She had the shape of a woman, with some additional features. Extra legs covered in small hair-like follicles protruded from her back, and most of her body, save her head, was covered in purple leather-like skin. Mace said the skin peeled back, and that most of her was white and smooth underneath to match the tone of her face. His description was more than I'd ever wanted to hear about how a spiderkin looked beneath their carapace.
I'm glad I waited.
Ophelia drew a circle on the table with one claw.
You brought my favorite toy. And some cargo, hopefully?
60 women, I said. Ophelia grinned to reveal fangs.
The market's bad for women right now. You should think of dabbling in men.
They're more trouble than they're worth.
Isn't that the truth?
Ophelia's red eyes shifted to Mace.
But they have their benefits. They're stronger, they last longer, they're prettier to look at.
Mace shuddered with excitement. I scooted away from him. Name your price.
10 fawn a head.
20. Ophelia shook her head.
Too high.
That's what we agreed on last time.
Things change and markets fluctuate. As I said, women are bad right now. Men are worth more.
Why? She tore her gaze away from Mace. She leaned back and tapped the wooden table with her claws.
War broke out on the northern front with the Fielians 3 weeks ago. The Duke is looking for conscripts. He's sending any set of legs with a pulse and an arm that can hold a sword.
A war was big news. Big enough we should have heard of it from one of our contacts. But we'd been traveling the past 2 months. It explained why we hadn't heard. Still, the mere mention of Fielians set my heart racing. Trusting slaves to fight his war is bold.
He's desperate. Half his army was wiped out in the initial battle, and they're losing ground. The Fielians mean business. General Vagar leads them.
I maintained a neutral face. They were finally coming. I wished it had been anyone else to lead the charge. Vagar, even 10 years ago, had a knack for causing me trouble. Slaves won't save the Duke.
No, but it presents an opportunity.
Ophelia rubbed her thumb and forefinger together.
He's going to bleed his coffers dry to save himself before the war is over.
It won't matter. If the Fielians intend to occupy, they'll melt down our currency and make a new one. Ophelia shrugged.
I'll just have to spend what I make before the change.
I doubted that. No merchant worth half a brain and a brass tack to his name would be selling anything of value at the moment. Most would hunker down and wait to see the outcome of the war. 18 ahead.
I won't get more than 20 for each of those women.
16 then. Ophelia paused, then shook her head ruefully and glanced at Mace.
Only because you brought this one. You'll let me borrow him for a couple of days.
Deal. I extended my hand. Ophelia's hands were moist and strange to the touch. He's forged to Chief, so he knows how to find us. Don't keep him for more than 5 days. I walked out alone. Ophelia's helpers followed me to collect their new cargo. Chief argued and spat that he would decrease my pay. 16 was too low. I recited the numbers. We could buy enough supplies to last us for 2 years with that kind of money. He relented. The women were exchanged for coin, and we spent 2 days trading for various supplies. We were careful not to attract too much attention. Tocker bought a wagon to carry the extras. We left on the morning of the 3rd day, with no guards or trouble in sight. They would have been up north fighting the Duke's battles. We were careful anyways, despite their absence. Uncharacteristically, Chief talked while we walked.
Ophelia told you about the war?
He asked. She did. Did you know about it?
I heard while we were gathering supplies. Do you have any thoughts?
Chief eyed me. I kept my face blank. I knew what his unspoken question alluded to. I ignored his insinuation and answered as any true Southerner would have. The Duke's years of easy living have made this province an easy target. If he loses, they'll take the territory as a tributary. I didn't want to say what I really thought, not with the others around.
They already have.
Chief scratched his beard.
Did Ophelia tell you Vagar has already made it to Gatelin's Harbour?
No. Gatelin's Harbour was only a 3 days' ride to the northeast. Who did you hear that from?
Rolf.
Rolf? I frowned. Is that the Fletcher?
The same. His stock's completely out. The Duke's personal guard are making supply runs and he can't keep up.
That doesn't make sense. If the Fiellians are that close, the townspeople would have been in a panic. Chief shot me a knowing look. I muddled over the information, and the pieces clicked. Ophelia's not selling our slaves to the Duke.
She will, if only to make some cheap money. But she's also made a bargain with the Fiellians. Once they break through, the rest of the province is going to be spared. Ophelia will be granted the Duke's titles and land, and all his possessions. It's as smooth a transition as there ever will be in war.
Chief spit a long stream to the side. Some of the men cheered at the display. I was impressed. Ophelia had played her cards well, sell out to the winning side and become a noble as a result. It was enough to make me envious. We'll have to start riding to the west. Chief nodded. Ophelia wouldn't just be made nobility with this deal. Her occupation would change as well. From slave trader to regent of the land. If we raided her villages, she would have to respond. Normally that wouldn't have been an issue. It didn't matter who sat the throne. With Arkmace sharing her bed, however, she had a direct line to wherever we were at any given time. We should have waited to trade with Indo, I mused. Chief chuckled.
It's just as well. Her participation will hasten things. It's taken a decade to end this farce.
I didn't respond. I'm sure Chief would have liked me to, and his hints indicated how eager he really was, but I was in no state to discuss it. In fact, I'd almost begun to believe this day would never come. Now that it was near, I found myself dreading what came next. We moved double time across the Casparian undulates. The hills were vast, and they ran along the entirety of Maera's mountain range. They bordered 6 other provinces and technically belonged to the Duke, but that was only because no one else wanted to claim them. The ground was rough, hard, and impossible to farm. Many people thought it was more trouble than it was worth. Their loss was our gain. Normally, we would have stuck to the center, undetected. However, we had to know what was going on in the war, so we travelled along the southern edge. We asked for updates in every village we came across. Most people were ignorant and didn't care for the war in the duchy. 3 weeks in, we finally met someone with a modicum of interest.
The Fiellians won.
It was a pig farmer that told us. He had a sister in Timewinders that worked in the tavern. The two communicated through a forged chalkboard. What was written on one board appeared on the other. It must have been a family heirloom, because even with all the money we'd made selling slaves, we couldn't have afforded a piece like that.
The Duke fled on a boat out on the Eastern Ocean, but word is the Fiellian mariners sunk him.
The Fiellians have mariners? Blood asked. He and I had been the ones tasked with visiting the village. Chief stayed behind to manage the men. I'd been picked because the chief trusted me to come back with accurate information, and Blood had come because he was the most charismatic of all of us. Being charismatic among bandits wasn't saying much, but we had to use what was available.
I guess they do,
the pig farmer said. He looked at me for confirmation, and I gave a nod.
That won't be good for trade.
Blood shifted in his seat. The two of us were pretending to be wandering merchants. Everyone knows the Fiellians are going to use new coin now.
Rumor is they're not staying.
The pig farmer scratched his head.
They're going to work through a new duchess as proxy. We'll be a tributary, but they'll leave us alone as long as we pay. Only 1%, too.
Really? Blood feigned excitement. That's good news for us.
That's not where the good news ends.
The pig farmer grinned.
The new duchess, Ophelia, is going after them bandits, too.
That caught my attention. The ones in the undulates?
Yep. She said there's been a banditry problem long enough, and that it's time to take care of it. Of course, that's what the last Duke said. I don't think she'll really do it. Those bandits are like rats. Just when you think you've got the last of them, 10 more appear in your barn.
Rats can be dealt with. It takes the right person and bait, I said, though the wheels of my mind worked overtime. We had confirmation Ophelia was coming after us. It was likely the Fiellians were using her as their figurehead. Chief would need to know as soon as possible.
I don't like using poison. It's too much of a risk that my other animals will be affected.
The pig farmer shook his head. We agreed, though for different reasons. Poison took too long to kill. We ate a mixture of bacon, sausage, and pork roast that night. It was a lot better than Tasteless's regular cooking. What supplies we'd used coming this far were replenished from food stores of other homes in the village. We left the entire place a smouldering heap as a warning for Ophelia's new mutts. Now that we knew she was coming after us, there was no reason to keep a low profile. I wished it could have been different. Now that the Fiellians were coming, I thought on my life 10 years ago. How had things spiraled so out of control? This isn't what we'd planned. The deaths I'd caused weighed on me, and I looked back continually at the smoke that filled the sky. Sunju's hate-filled eyes filled my mind, symbolic of all the people I'd killed. I wished I could forget her. Such was my curse as a memorist. The band discussed Ophelia's newfound vendetta against us and argued. Chief put forth several solutions. I shot them down. I offered several of my own. Chief poked holes through them just as I had his. None of us had any real, meaningful suggestions to offer. Unforging the chief from Arkmace was the only way forward, but the only forger willing to work with us was back at Timewinders. Brimshaw suggested we could leave Chief behind. That won't work, I said.
Why not?
Arkmace is only forged to Chief, but Chief is forged to all of us. I pointed at each of the men in turn. All our souls are indirectly linked. If they find Chief alone without the rest of us, they'll use him to track us all down. That sobered the group. We debated more. Days passed with no solution. Every minute that went by, the breath of Ophelia's hounds grew thicker on our necks.
The only real escape is to separate Arkmace from Chief,
Looker said.
We have to find a forger. Where?
Chief pointed to the empty landscape.
A forger's not going to stick around these ramshack hinkle-dink villages.
Looker pressed.
Flood Mesa will have one. It's the closest city. Once Ark Mesa's forge is broken, make your way back to us. I'd rather die.
Chief spat. That is what will happen if you stay, I said. Looker's suggestion had merit. We can hang low for a while. The undulates are large. We have the supplies to move into Miera's mountain range if we need to. Ophelia's men won't find us there. A few men argued about the taboo of the mountains. The rest of us quickly smothered the talk. Everyone knew no one crossed the mountains because of how treacherous they were, and not because of some legend. Regardless, it was the only option left to us, and it was as good as any. Another day passed before Chief finally decided to go. No tears were shed, but everyone felt a weight in their chest. Even Lookout was solemn. We were brothers in arms, bound together in crime. Chief was our fearless leader, and the only authority most of us had ever respected and trusted. Without him, we weren't complete.
You all listen to Sitter. You understand?
He barked,